Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to ENG3E Term 2A. I'm your instructor, Mike Laverty. Today is February 7th, 2023, and this is class number 2. We are still working on Unit 1. Today, we're going to cover unit assignments 4 and 5. We're going to look at the road ahead, so page 4 of our textbook. And we're going to look at making it work, our other textbook, page 23. So that's up on the screen there. You see a general roadmap of what we're going to do today. So in every class, I'm going to do my best to give you some information about some of the unit assignments, and then we'll tackle 1 or 2 or maybe more of the textbook assignments. So just going back to last class, you are responsible for the textbook assignments. So those are listed in your unit. You'll see that there's a table that tells you which pages of the textbook you're supposed to go to and answer questions. And then in the unit material, there's also questions in there too, right? So you have to answer questions in 3 different locations. The ones that are found in the textbook, and they're listed as unit assignments. And then there's the textbook questions that are found in the 2 textbooks. So road ahead and making it work. And I'll explain that to the best of my ability as we go on through today's class. So every day I'll do some announcements. These are the same as yesterday, but it's just a good reminder for everyone. We're in week 1 of classes. This is a 9-week unit, sorry, a 9-week course. So we'll have 9 weeks of classes. We will not have a class on Monday, February 20th due to Family Day / Louis Riel Day, and March 13th. March break starts March 13th and runs to the 16th. So there's no classes broadcast during that time, but then we come back the following week and we finish off the course. So there will be 9 weeks of courses, 9 weeks of classes in total, not including March break. So there's just a general breakdown. We are, of course, on week number 1, and we're working on unit 1. Unit 1 is the longest unit in terms of how many assignments there are, and I like to spend more time on that. So we may go into week 3, but we'll see how that goes. And then we'll kind of gauge how we go from there. And then hopefully we will spend a solid week. Like I'm hoping week number 9, we can devote that entirely to getting everybody ready for their final exam or their course culminating activity, because there's a lot of stuff to prep for. So, but as we go through the course, we'll have to reevaluate and change how things go. So the theme of ENG3E is, of course, the journey. Unit 1 is preparing for the journey. And so myself as the teacher, I'm trying to be the guide and guide you through your own journey, and I'll take my own journey as I teach this course. So it's my first time teaching it, as I mentioned yesterday, so I'm going to have to make some changes as I go along, and would invite feedback from students if you think I'm talking too fast. I know I can do that. Let me know if you can't hear me, just if I'm not speaking clearly, or if I'm not explaining things in detail, if you think I should spend more time on the questions, spend more time explaining what's in the units, what's in the textbook. So, I'm open for any feedback of any kind. So don't be afraid to throw a little criticism my way, right? So I'm hoping it's a give and take between the 2 of us, right? I'm going to read your work, give you some feedback, and I'm hoping you can do the same for me. So I just want to make it known, I double checked, and yes, our studio is not quite ready. We're setting up a brand new studio, so I'm excited to get in the new studio and broadcast from there. But for now, I'm broadcasting in our existing setup here in down the basement. So I'm in the dungeon here of WASA, and right now the only way to listen to it live is through the only way to listen and watch live is through Zoom. So you see there's that Zoom link down here on the bottom of your page. So, and you want to pay attention to those that 417-669-9799. If you go to zoom.us, or if you just type that whole link into your cell phone, your laptop, whatever you're using, you'll bring up this Zoom screen and you can hopefully join in to the class live. Next week, we should be back in the new and updated studio, and we'll be able to broadcast on the radio and broadcast on Bell ExpressVu. After the courses are done, like this morning, I uploaded yesterday's class. So if you go to YouTube and look up Laverty Wassa, you will find my YouTube channel. And I just started a new playlist. So if you search up playlists, or sorry, just click on that link, you will get my playlist for ENG3E. There's one playlist that's going to have every class I do, and then there's going to be a playlist called Unit 1, ENG2A Unit 1, so you can see all the videos that cover Unit 1. So just to make it a bit easier for you to find what you're looking for. And so a very, very important issue here, a very important topic to cover, how to get your work to myself. So you can ask your DEC to scan it, email it, or fax it. So, talk to your DEC, see if they can help you out, see if they can get that material to me. And you can scan and email it yourself if you got access to a scanner or a photocopier that can do that for you. You can email myself email the receptionist at studentwork@nnec.on.ca, and then you CC me. So email it to both of us. And that's my email address on the screen, mlaverty@nnecschools.org. You can always fax pages to the number listed, 1-800-463-7852. And you can take photos with your phone and then email it that way. Or you can send it on Facebook Messenger. So I recommend that students download the Adobe Scan app, which is the Adobe Scan app is a free app that anybody can download. There is a paid version of it, but you don't need that. Just go for the free one. I like the Adobe Scan app because it allows you to correct the images. It allows you to scan it and straighten it out and enhance it. So it just makes your scans look a lot better. And just keep that in mind when you're submitting work to me or any other student at Wassa or any other course you take. If we can't read what you're writing, then it's hard for us to give you the grade you really deserve. So make sure it's readable, make sure it's legible, do your best to straighten it out. Try to put that piece of paper under a piece of lighting, try to make sure it's well lit and we can just see what you're doing. And if I get something I can't really read, then I'll of course tell you about it and get it back to you. But try and get it right the first time. And just know there's many ways you can get your work to a teacher. So just explore one of those options and stick to it. And if you need help, talk to your DC. If you want to talk to me directly, absolutely get in touch with me. That's my coordinates on the screen, my email. Look for me on Facebook, add me as a friend if you want. You don't have to. I won't be offended if you don't add me as a friend on Facebook. If you do, I only post professional Wassa related updates. So you'll just get updates about this course and possibly other courses that I'm teaching, but it'll all be useful. And if you don't want to do that, we can just talk on Messenger. So if you want to ask me questions on Messenger, if you want to share assignments with me on Messenger, then do that. And then you can phone me at those two numbers listed below. So the first phone number is the direct number to the office. You can phone the extension 2211, ask for Mike. If you get the automated system, just type in that extension 2211. The number on the bottom, 1-800-667-3703 is our toll-free number. You're going to want to contact me Monday through Friday, Central Standard Time, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And here's your next step. So you contact me through email, Facebook, Messenger, phone, or text. And then I want you to read the study guide and just have a quick review of our textbooks, okay? And then tomorrow I'll update some next steps where I think you should be in the course. But just for now, as long as you've read the study guide and you've participated in the classes, you're well on your way. And have a look at the textbooks. Make sure you have them. And if you don't have any course material, if you don't have the study guide, Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3, and 4, if you don't have the textbooks, then now is the time to reach out and we'll get those to you as soon as we can. So we got a busy class today, so let's get to it. We've got our words of the day. We'll look at a selection from the textbook, How to Understand and Analyze Poetry. That's the Making It Work textbook, pages 20 to 23. We're going to have a close reading of a poem called Erosion. We're going to look at The Road Not Taken. That's the Robert Frost poem. And we're going to look at the textbook assignment and the unit assignments that deal with that poem, The Road Ahead. Sorry, the Road Not Taken. I keep getting those two mixed up. So here's our learning goals for today. We're going to learn about reading and analyzing poetry. We're going to do a close reading of 2 poems. And we're going to review questions related to the Robert Frost poem, The Road Not Taken. Our success criteria, your success criteria will be to take notes on analyzing poetry. So I'm hoping when you watch the video, you can have a pen and a pad open. So some way you can take notes down and just jot down some important things that might come up later. And you'll be successful if you can answer questions related to the poem, The Road Not Taken. All right, so let's jump into our words of the day. So on the screen, you've got an Anishinaabe word. That's Babamadizwin, which is a noun, it means journey. And then we have the English word journey, which is the act of traveling from one place to another. I love looking at the origins of words. That's a field known as etymology. Entomology is the study of bugs, and etymology is the origin of words. So the origin of this word is from the Old French for journée, which is a day or a day's travel. So jour is French for day. And so journey literally means a day's travel. But as we all know, the meaning of journey has changed. And now it's, much longer than a day, and could be weeks, months, years, could be a whole lifetime. Some related words, we've got Ikana, which is a road, a trail, a path. I'm doing my best to pronounce these words. I may get them wrong. Please let me know. Chibi Mu Dawin is a migration. Think back to yesterday's class. We discussed the migration of Arctic birds, ones that go, 80,000, 90,000 kilometers in a year. Incredibly long migrations. Some English words to keep in mind, a pilgrimage. So a pilgrimage is a journey to a place of particular interest or significance. And the original meaning of the word pilgrim was someone who journeys to a sacred place for a religious reason, right? So that is the technical definition of a pilgrim. And a pilgrimage was traditionally, you would go to like a cathedral or a church of some kind, some place of significance to you, right? So like in the Christian faith, but now it's got a more broad meaning, and it's kind of anybody going on a religious quest, or some kind of going for a religious reason. Like people would go to Rome, for example. If they were Catholics, they would make a pilgrimage to Rome to either see the Pope speak or visit the Vatican City. An odyssey is a long and eventful or adventurous journey or experience, and that's from the Greek story, the Odyssey. Thousands of years old. It's a story about a man named Odysseus, and then he makes the Odyssey. And then now that word is it's a special kind of journey, one that's sort of like adventurous and long and eventful. And So if you go on an Odyssey, right, that's like a special kind of journey. All right, so just want to touch upon this really quickly. Yesterday's class, we talked about questions 1 and 2 in the assignment, and then we looked at questions 3 and 4 after that. You know, what is a journey? Give an example, 2 sentences, and I stress the importance of speaking in full sentences. So, you know, writing in full sentences and then talking about going from like point form to fully fledged thoughts. Okay, so I want to touch upon that really quickly, right? So when the question asks, you know, why do you think it's important to be prepared for any journey you decide to make? You know, why is it important to be prepared for a journey, right? So 1 or 2 sentences, right? So I would like to just demonstrate that for you. I'm going to pull up a Word document. I'm going to do a new share. All right, so I got my Word document up here. I'm gonna make my font a lot bigger so you can, so why is it important to prepare for a journey? That's the question, right? So what I want to do is I quickly want to demonstrate just ways that you can do this when you're writing your assignments to me. So you know, important details to include would be, you know, put your name, put your community, forests, and maybe I'll say and this is 4. So why I'll do the exact wording, okay? Why do you think it is important to be prepared for any journey you decide to make? 1 or 2 sentences. 1 or 2 sentences. Okay, that's the question as written, and maybe we'll just shrink that down so we can see. So there we go. So that's what I would do. And then what I would suggest doing for a lot of these questions is just to do, like, you know, I call these my rough notes or my sentence prompts. And then just, you know, just start writing down as much just raw ideas, just things and images that pop into your head. So I would like you to take this approach to a lot of the assignments in this course. Like, you don't have to just start writing right away and expect to come up with a good idea. That's really hard to do. So sometimes, especially if you've been reading a lot and writing a lot and practicing, words will just fly into your head and they'll come out of you. It's almost like being an athlete. Like if you've been doing it for a long time, and if you spend your whole day reading and writing, then it just comes to you like nothing. But if you're out of practice and you haven't done it for a while, this is a good strategy that I would really recommend that students take, right? So just jot down rough ideas, and I'm calling them sentence prompts. So it's like you jot down a rough idea and you turn that into a sentence, right? So I'm gonna say, why do you think it's important to be prepared for a journey? So you know, things might not work out. Good to know where you are going. You will need things to solve problems. Need to get your mind and body ready. And yeah. So there you go. So that's, I've got 1, 2, right? So I could so you see, I've got these 4 ideas, right? Things might not work out. Good to know where you were going. You will need things to solve problems, and need to get your mind and body ready. All right. So those are my rough notes, and I call them my sentence prompts because I could turn any one of them into a sentence, right? So I could go down like this, and I could say, you know, sentences, right? So I've got my rough notes, my sentence prompts, and then I could try and see, and I would say something like, you know, you need to prepare yourself mentally and physically for any journey, because things might not work out as planned. All right, so that's good, right? So that's I actually combined the things might not work out with getting your mind and body ready, right? So maybe I'm gonna change that, because you will be tested along the way, right? So, and then I could write a sentence that elaborates on that, right? So from here, you know, I could either and then I'll expand upon that, right? So going from rough notes to a fully finished sentence, and, you know, just take it from there, right? So just use that approach, just jotting down lots of ideas and then taking the best ones. So it works for me, and I would really suggest that you do that. So let's go back in. Okay. All right, so we are on to, so this is page 23 of Making It Work. So in the unit guide, you'll see that there's a list of readings that you're supposed to do. So there's a table that shows the assignments you have to hand in. So I just want to make sure I have that right. So yeah, so table 3 is textbooks assignments. So that shows you the textbook questions that you have to go to the textbook, answer the questions, submit those to me. And then table 2 is a list of articles you need to read from the Making It Work textbook. Page 23 is one of them. That is it's how to understand and analyze poetry. It's actually pages 20 to 23. So there's 3 pages in there. So this is from one of your required readings, okay? So when we analyze poetry and most texts, we need to focus on specific details and make connections. So I really want to emphasize that, right? So when you're writing about poetry, especially, but when you're writing about any kind of text, a short story, a poem, a cover letter, a report, it's really important to focus on the specific details of that work, okay? And then those specific details will make your writing stronger, okay? And then you make connections between those details, right? And then connect the small pieces to the big pieces, right? So we must look at a poem as a whole. We have to look at how it's organized, its length, its tone, etc., and focus on individual words, lines, and stanzas. So a stanza is kind of like, you know, in essays, we have paragraphs, and paragraphs are chunks of writing. in poems, we have stanzas. So you have line, 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 and then you'll see a break where there's no line. Those lines that are stacked together is called a stanza. Our analysis will tell the reader. So it's a two-part process, really. You're looking at the big picture. How is this poem organized as a whole? And then looking at the small picture, focusing on, details. So what the poem is about. So that's a big picture kind of thing, right? What is it really about? What's the main point? What is this poem really getting at? What devices did the poet use? On the next slide, I'll talk about some of those devices. What the poet wants the reader to see, right? So what are they trying to make you visualize? Words that stand out and why. So when you're looking at poetry and song lyrics, right, you're going to isolate some key words and just talk about those key words. And the effect of the poem on the reader. So how does the poem make you feel? What does it make you think about, right? So that's arguably, the most important part of a poem, right? Is how it makes you feel inside and what it makes you think, right? And that's probably the hardest thing to figure out. That requires the most thinking and work on your part. So you may have heard some of these words before, maybe not, but it's good to have a refresher. So a simile. So these are poetic devices. So a device is something a poet uses to make meaning in their poems. It makes their poems come alive. It makes them exciting to read. And these aren't all of them, but these are the most common. So a simile is a comparison. So you're comparing two things, like or as, like she was like a sunset. Her hair, her eyes looked like emeralds. I don't know if they were green, right? That's like and then a metaphor is a direct comparison that says two unlike things are the same. The highway was a snake. The teacher was a monster, right? It's a direct comparison. This thing was that thing. It wasn't like it was that, right? This day is a nightmare. This day is, that's a metaphor. Personification is when you give human qualities to non-human things, so to animals, to objects, right? Alliteration is the repetition of initial consonants, so that's the first letters of the word, or letters, right? So sometimes, like Attila attacked at, it's that A sound. So assonance is when the vowels repeat. Alliteration is when the consonants repeat, but it's the same idea. So just think of repeating sounds. And if you listen to a lot of hip hop, this is alliteration and assonance are very commonly used. It's just pay attention to when things repeat in poetry. That it's usually there's something going on there. So if you see repetition, that's important. A symbol is a concrete object which suggests a more complex and abstract idea. So a symbol is something that looks like something that normal on the surface, but really it's about something deeper, right? So it's a concrete object. So when they say it suggests, so it's suggesting something more. It's serving as a symbol, right? And so that's what symbols really are. It's an ordinary object, or it's some kind of a thing in the world, but it's not just what it looks like. There's more, like Transformers, right? It's more than meets the eye. There's something more there, right? So especially with poetry and English and short stories and novels, you've got to look beyond the surface meaning, right? So the author is talking about a horse, but are they really just talking about a horse, right? On the surface, it's just two people having coffee. But what's really happening here, right? What's the real symbol? So in the textbook Making a Work, we have this poem by Newfoundland poet E.J. Pratt. It took the sea 1,000 years to trace the granite features of this cliff in crag and scarp and base. It took the sea an hour one night, an hour of storm to place the sculpture of these granite seams upon a woman's face. And so it's delivered in one stanza, and you're supposed to pause after each line. And after the comma, you're supposed to pause a little bit longer if there was no comma there. And so that's the poem. And if we think back to our devices, we have the repetition. We have 1,000 years, 1,000 years. We have an hour one night, an hour of storm, right? So you see that repetition. If we think about erosion is when something happens over and over and over again, like when the sea washes over a boulder and turns it into a pebble. It's that repetition, it's that over and over and over again. So maybe that's why there's repetition here. We've got the sculpture of these granite seams upon a woman's face. So we're saying that a woman's face has granite seams on it. So that's a metaphor, right? So we're not saying her face is like a granite rock. We're saying her face is a granite rock. Yeah, so there's the repetition. There is if we look in the textbook, there is the personification. So the sea is meant to, the sea is tracing things, like the sea is meant to be like a human force or like a godlike force that's doing things. We've got the granite is like a symbol, and crag, scarp, and base. These are like rough and hard sounding words. They're meant to make us think of the rock, right? So if you go to page 23 in your textbook, Making It Work, then you'll see a full description of how they take this poem and they analyze it. So up on the screen here, we got an old woman's face and the rough scrags of the granite. That's actually from Newfoundland. So maybe when the poet E.J. Pratt was thinking about granite, he was looking at a rock face pretty much like the one you see on the screen. If you use your imagination, it's not too hard to picture faces in there, right? There's lots of indigenous cultures around the world that have legends about little people that live in rocks, and lots of European and Asian myths too that have stories about, rocks coming alive and giants living in rocks. And if you got the sleeping giant in Thunder Bay, but so if you look at that rock face, you can kind of see a face right there, right? So that rock face is weathered because of the wind and the winters, and this woman's face is weathered because she's been through a long life. So that's the metaphor, that's the comparison, that's the connection. And so here's your question. What are the granite seams upon a woman's face? What has happened to place these seams on the woman's face? What is the effect of the repetition in the poem? Okay, so that's two-part question, right? So why is the repetition in there? And then what are the granite seams, right? So a seam is, like on my shirt, right? That's a seam, right? Where two things are bound together. So use your imagination. If that's a seam right here, what's a seam on someone's face, right? Just think of the word. And what has happened to place these seams on the woman's face, right? And I'll draw your attention to one line from the poem. It took the sea an hour one night, an hour of storm to place the sculpture of these granite seams upon a woman's face. So she's been through a hard life, and that's, why she has these granite seams on her face. But why would it take an hour? So that's my question to you. I want you to think about that deeply, right? What happened in that hour, right? That could do this to the woman's face, right? So you have to use your imagination, right? So again, on the surface, we're talking about a woman with granite seams on her face, but that hour, that's what sticks out to me, is what happened. So use your imagination. There's not one answer to this, but just think about that when you answer that question. Take a guess. All right, so now we are on to our poem by Robert Frost. Okay, so the poem by Robert Frost is found in the Road Ahead textbook. I think it's the first thing you read in the book. It's on page, yeah, there it is. It's on page 4 and 5. So if you open up your textbook, you'll find this poem. Okay, it's got 4 stanzas. I'll read them. Okay, and so just think about those metaphors and similes and repetition and tone and symbolism, right? So just think about those things. 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveler, long as I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. So in stanza 1, I want you to really focus on, like that one question: what does the poet want you, the reader, to see? And think about this: be one traveler, long as I stood. So like, in my mind, I'm picturing like a gigantic man with huge legs that can span over, and he could peek over at one path and he can peek over at this path. So you had this giant, and it's sort of like a fantastical image, and then he can see down both paths. So he's almost like a superhero, and he can see what's going to happen when he goes down one path, right? So that's what I'm picturing, right? So that's what he wants to travel both paths, but he can't. He can only travel down one. So he wishes he could do this, right? So he's not literally doing this. He's wishing he could do this, right? But he's using his imagination to imagine what it would be like if he could do that. Then took the other, and just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same. Okay, so again, he's imagining what it's like to go down these paths, and then because it was grassy and it wanted wear, so that's again personification. The trail wants wear, it wants people to ride on it. Had worn them really about the same. So he's kind of saying the paths aren't that different. So that's important to keep that in mind. And both that morning equally lay, and leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. So he picked one path, right? Both of the paths have leaves that no step had trodden black, right? So both paths have leaves on it. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference, right? So again, he's not actually saying this right now. He's trying to imagine what it's going to be like in the future, right? And he'll look back on this day, right? So that you really got to break this thing down and just try to picture, like what has happened in the story, what has actually happened. And so he's not really doing a lot of traveling. He's actually just thinking about the traveling and thinking about what it's going to be like if he goes down this path or goes down the other, right? So I would keep that in mind as you think about the road not taken. And again, let's talk about the imagery and the symbolism of this poem. What do the road not taken, right? So are we just talking about a couple of roads in the woods, in the bush? Are we just talking about paths? Or are we talking about something a little bit deeper and talking about our own lives, our own journeys, right? Going up and down paths and wishing you could do both things, and making decisions. And when you make a decision, it's final, right? You can't go back. It's not a video game. You can't save it and go back, or it's not a movie where you put it on pause, or it just flows in one direction, and you have to pick one of those paths, and you have to deal with your decisions, and you can't go back 10 years and and change the path you took, right? But you can go back and think about it and maybe tell it a bit differently, right? So I would argue that this poem is about storytelling. It's about telling the story of our lives. It's about looking back on the choices we made, understanding those choices, being honest with our choices. So I think it's a lot to do with things like that. So in the poem, The Road Not Taken, so this is, again, this is our assignments from Unit 1. In the poem, The Road Not Taken, what is your interpretation of Mr. Frost's last 3 lines? 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. At least 2 sentences, right? So just that's your interpretation. So that's your analysis, right? So when you interpret things, you are making connections to your own life. You're analyzing, you're having a look at the meanings of what's happening here. So in tomorrow's class, I'm gonna talk about how we read how we read literature and how we take things apart. So if you look at making it work, the textbook, and if you flip to page 5, it's right off the bat. There are 4 categories for building understanding and reading. One of them is recognizing what words mean. One of them is understanding directly stated information. So we look at words and we understand what they mean. That's what reading is all about. We look at directly stated information. That is information that's in the text. It's words that I can read. So directly stated is the stuff the poet actually said, right? It's the words that are actually in the poem, right? So that is directly stated by the poet. There's no debate on it. Me and you can't argue about it. It's in the poem. Stanza 3, line 1, and both that morning equally lay, right? It's in there. Indirectly stated information is information that I have to come up with myself. It's when we read between the lines, when we say what the author was really getting at, right? It's sort of like a joke, right? The directly stated information is the joke itself, right? It's what the joker says, right? But the thing that makes the joke funny is not said, right? The joke is not said. Like, you have to get the joke. It's like a puzzle, right? And if you don't get the joke, you don't get it. And it's not as funny when somebody explains it to you. It's kind of the same thing with poetry, right? You have to get it on your own. And it's hard to do that if you're not used to reading a lot of poetry. Same thing goes for humor, right? You're not going to get a lot of jokes until you have them explained to you, and then you're like, oh, okay, I see why that's funny. And then you hear another joke and you kind of get it. And then, poetry is very similar, right? So that's the indirect stuff, is the deeper meaning. It's the mood, it's the tone, it's the things you have to think about. And then there's the interpretation, right? And the interpretation is asking, what does this situation remind me of in my own life? So you're interpreting the words and you're doing that deeper meaning. But when you interpret, you're thinking about, just think about your own life. That's what it means by your interpretation, right? And so there shouldn't be there's not really a wrong answer here. I just want you to talk in full sentences, right? When you interpret this poem. But I recently watched a YouTube video about this poem, and maybe I'll post it on Facebook for people to watch. And he was arguing that this might be one of the most misinterpreted poems of all time. And people think it's about, taking the road less traveled, and being adventurous, and being an explorer, and doing the hard thing and not doing the easy thing, right? But like, I don't know, I disagree, and I'm getting this from that YouTube video, and made a lot of sense to me. I think it's really about like deciding which path to take, and then telling the story about what path you took in life, right? And just think about your own life when you talk about yourself, right? I think sometimes we might do this. We might make our life seem a little bit harder, or more like heroic, or more adventurous than it really was, because nobody wants to say there was two paths and they were both pretty much the same and I just took one randomly, right? We don't want to tell that story. We want to tell the exciting one, right? There was two paths, and one was worn and down and easy, and one was super hard, and I took the adventurous one because I'm a brave, kind of exciting guy, right? So that's my interpretation. You may see it differently, but I think if you go back and read the poem, so you have to base your interpretation upon what the poet actually wrote, but then you can kind of have fun with it and make some guesses, right? And it's sort of like song lyrics, right? They mean different things to different people, right? So there's what's in the page, and then there's the deeper meaning between the lines, and there's the deeper meaning, right? So there's the surface meaning of a text. There's the words that we can just read and take literally, but there's always that deeper meaning, right? So that's kind of what a poem is, right? It's a lot of, it looks like a lot of surface details, but there's always that deeper meaning, right? There's always some deep symbolism happening, right? So go deep on this one and just take it to the next level. So what is this poem really about? What are those last three lines really about? If we go to the textbook assignments, so that's the road ahead, page number 4, you'll see that it's a two-part question. The first one says, describe the differences between the two paths the poet mentions. Explain why his choice has made all the difference for his journey. So there's the two paths, and explain the differences that the poet mentions, right? So just do a close reading, jot down, do your rough notes, just jot down path A, path B, right? Or path 1, path 2, describe the differences, and then explain why his choice has made all the difference for his journey, right? Whether his journey is real or it's imagined, or he will take it, right? I mentioned yesterday, there's I'm a huge Simpsons fan, and there's a scene where Marge's mom or her aunt, sorry, reads that poem, and then it's part of her will, and they just like fast forward right to the end of that very last line, and that has made all the difference, which is, now that I'm thinking about it, it's actually quite a funny joke, because it's sort of like people just skip over the whole first 3 stanzas and go right to that last line, and that has made all the difference. But think about this one deeply. What does he mean by his choice making all the difference, and what differences are there between the two paths? So I would suggest to you, just jot them down, make some notes, and then write in full sentences, right? So the poet describes the first path as, put it in quotation marks, just quote the text directly if you can, or just put it in your own words, right? So and then the second part of the question, just define the words diverged, and define the words hence. Okay. And so just, go to a dictionary, use a dictionary at home, or you can find one online. Dictionary.com is great, because it's probably one of the best websites you can use. It's free, it's out there. So maybe we'll do that right now. We'll just we'll have a look at that website. It's a really useful website to go through. Right. Oh, and then so tomorrow's class, we're going to look at question number 6, and This one is 6 sentences long, so it's your first big piece of writing. So next week we'll go into my favorite part of this course, the writing parts. I'm a writer myself, and I love teaching how to write. So we'll look at that next week, next class tomorrow, and we'll talk about a journey that you took, how long the journey was, why you did it, who'd you go with, how'd you prepare for it, you know, how did the journey go? So we're going to talk about that. So it's going to be your chance to share your journey and, you know, where you went. All right, so we'll do a new share here. We will so I will share Google. Okay, so I've got google.com up on my screen here, so you can type in dictionary down here, and then we'll see that, you know, dictionary.com comes up, Merriam-Webster's comes up, dictionary.cambridge. So there's lots to use. I just use dictionary.com. You can do this on your own, but you know, we can look at, so, and then you can just look up diverged, and you can look up hence. I'm going to plug in the word journey. And so when you pull up a word on dictionary.com,
journey,
there we go,
journey,
it'll say it for you, which is very handy. That's the phonetical spelling, right? So that's, you know, hooked on phonics works for me. So phonics is how words literally sound, not how they're spelled, but how they literally sound. So jur and knee, that's how you say that word, which comes in handy for some more complex words you may not know how to say. So it's a noun. So you get the parts. Remember, we talked about the parts of speech. So we know it's a noun. And then plural is journeys, right? So we just add an S. So it teaches you how to pluralize the word. It gives you 4 different, depending on the word, you'll have different definitions. So it's elementary level. So some words are going to be a little bit more advanced. So it's traveling from one place to another, usually taking a rather long time, a trip, a distance, course, area traveled or suitable for traveling, a period of travel, passage or progress from one stage to another. It's also a verb. So journeyed or journeying, right? So I am journeying, you know, I journeyed, right? So it can be a noun or it can be a verb, depending on how it's used in the sentence, right? And then if you scroll down, you get the word origins. That's the etymology, right? So again, that's why I mentioned that today. So journey is day, or a day's time, a day's work. And so you get other words that come. So journeyer, out journey, out journeyed, out journeying. And then you get words that are nearby. So you get journal in time, journalism, right? Journalistic, journeyman, right? So journey work. A person who has served as an apprentice at a trade handicraft and is certified to work at it, right? So there you go. So it's a very useful website. You get all kinds of information. You get words related to it, how to use journey in a sentence. So it's just a ton of information, right? So you can see how it's used in a sentence. You get more information about it. So use this website. It's very, very useful. And then you can go to thesaurus.com. So if I'm talking about a journey, I can see all kinds of words that are related to journey, like adventure, odyssey, pilgrimage, right? Quest, exploration, expedition, hike, itinerary, jaunt, migration, right? So all these words that are related, right? So, and then you have some lesser ones over here, right? That are sort of related to journey, but not quite the same thing, right? A trek, a trip, a visit. So it's just nice to see how words work in a network, right? And they're all related to each other. So that's an important concept to keep in mind. So That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for tuning in. I will see you tomorrow for class number 3.